All right, with this next phase of the drawing, I've zoomed us in because I'm going to be doing much tighter work and more exacting work as I move forward with the drawing. So now I'm looking at one of the higher resolution photographs that I've provided, looking at John's face up close. And I've also taken the vine charcoal and really sharpened it up considerably. So I spent a long time sanding it there and making it honed into a really elongated tip, so that we can really use that sharp point to try to get some specific details. I've already taken the bristle brush and brushed this down so that it's sort of fogged out and not overly overly uh, sharp in its line quality. So it's a little bit foggy in its line quality, and that enables me to rework the drawing with a fresh line of vine charcoal without having to go heavy-handed. So I like to pick something in the middle of the portrait and start to tighten up my shapes, um, and revise the shapes as I go along. So something in the middle and kind of revising and pushing out in all directions as I improve the shape. So I would like to start with this Terminator right here, uh, starting down the nose. The Terminator, arguably, this is kind of in the dead center of the drawing. Not that that has to be a criteria, but it's very central to the overall width. So I'm delineating the shape of the Terminator now with a little bit more exactitude, and I'm using vine charcoal. So we're not using charcoal pencils yet. We're just keeping it on in vine charcoal because the vine charcoal is very forgiving. So you notice I'm translating the Terminator into a series of straight edges, um, straight lines, and rather than having any curves, we're using all straight angles. And we like that because those curves are actually more accurately captured if we translate them into a series of angles. Now, as I expect to happen, as I do this, as I tighten up the drawing, I'll probably be discovering some edits. You know, I will expect that I might have to move things a little bit. So here I'm looking at the cast shadow coming off the nose, its angle, its shape, how far down it goes. Um, and I'm also thinking ahead to see if that's going to impact anything else. You know, is that going to end up pushing the mouth down, for example? We'll find out more as we get closer to that destination. But I do feel like as I drew this Terminator here, it caused me to see that the septum might get pushed a little lower. So hopefully the edits that we discover at this stage are they aren't huge edits. You know, this is more about fine tuning the line drawing. So the first couple of passes that we've already made should get us within 85 to 90% accuracy, and this is about really tightening it up that final 10%. Or so we think. It turns out that we keep um, discovering more and more uh, higher and higher states of refinement and correction and truth to the drawing that are possible to achieve. So I'm looking at the shadow shape of the nostril here as a puzzle piece. How high does it come to relative to the other side? What are the angles that describe it? There's a little kneaded eraser correction there. Now look at this space. If the nostril is here, I'll just provide a little temporary poster value for the nostril so we can read that as a dark shape. If the nostril is there, then we need a little bit of space to achieve this shape of the beginning of the mustache here. So I see, whoa, the mustache needing to drop a little bit. And the nasolabial furrow in 2 angles here, a 1 and then a 2. And you see they start to create puzzle pieces for us to test the fit with. We're testing the fit of all of these puzzle pieces. I'm using a kneaded eraser here to lift out some of the ghost of the older drawing, and you'll find that on this paper, using the vine charcoal and the kneaded eraser, it's going to lift out really quite easily. And we discovered that the vine charcoal is a very silty, soft charcoal material. It's not permanent. It's not hard like a graphite pencil or a charcoal pencil. It's much softer than both of those. It's very silty and powdery in its character, and it's kind of impermanent. It can easily be brushed away, rubbed away, and definitely if you attack it with an eraser, it's probably going to be lift away altogether. Unless we've really worked the vine charcoal into the paper with a lot of excessive pressure, we can achieve a moment where we sort of stain the paper with vine charcoal if we've really worked it in. But if you're working light-handed, as I propose, and you're frequently brushing the drawing down with the brush, the paper shouldn't get to that stained state. Notice how the outer angle of this nostril is not straight up and down, but leaning back at about 11:55. It's almost 12 o'clock, straight up and down, but it's actually leaning to the left a little. So rather than keep going down, let's stay in the middle of the drawing because we want to push outwards from these puzzle pieces. And the philosophy is that if we're revising from the center out, we can push the edits and the trim, the excess, or if we need to add on, we can push that to happen at the outer perimeter of the drawing rather than at some high stakes moment of the drawing. Here I'm drawing extra lightly because there's a lot of light there, and we're not going to use any black charcoal in there in the end. It's just going to be white chalk and paper showing through clean paper. So be extra light with how you delineate some of these forms out here. But look at this piece. For me, that's that magic space on the face, the distance between the top of the nostril and the bag of the eye. And noticing how really small that is. Super small. Different than what I've got so far, so indicating maybe an edit. This piece of light has a track, has a tail going way up into the eye socket, the glabella. So that could be a possible edit for me as I tighten up here, as I revise a little bit more and more. Now, one thing I think I'll do just to help keep the drawing clean and orderly is take the kneaded eraser and let's lift out very gently here. I think the key is you want to erase very, very gently because we're trying to nurture the integrity of the paper. When we're kids, we're sort of we sort of have cultivated this feeling about erasing, like we need to attack it, like it's an error that's occurred, and we need to stomp out the evil of the mistake. But and so we turn the pencil around and we attack the paper with the eraser. But we need to think about it much more carefully in making a fine drawing. We realize that when we rub the paper with the eraser, it's a violent experience for the paper. So we need to think about it more like a surgery. We want to make a correction, but we need to consider the health and safety of the patient at the same time. So the erasing is very delicate, and we're thinking about all those little microfibers that microscopically make up the fabric of the paper, and how we don't want to irritate them and disrupt them and damage them. So you see I'm just dabbing with the eraser, kissing with the eraser, or if I'm wiping, it's very gentle. And the kneaded eraser really helps to preserve the integrity of the paper. Whereas other erasers, they're more aggressive. A harder white plastic eraser is a more aggressive tool to use for erasing. You can see how the eraser could even be something that you almost draw with. By cutting with the eraser here the way that I am right now, I'm able to move that line over into a place where I would like it to be. This crease in John's forehead is it's a really nice part of his face to measure the glabella and to find relationships with other surrounding features. And it's important. Maybe it's important to say for this portrait that for those of you who haven't met John face to face, or spoken with him or interacted with him, that he's sort of the look and appearance kind of could fit the personality of like an intimidating kind of a Harley Davidson biker or something like that. The kind of guy you wouldn't want to tangle with outside of a bar or something like that. But really, for those of you who have met him, know that he's really incredibly gentle and sweet and very kind and friendly and soft-spoken. So, his appearance is an incredible paradox, which makes the portrait very interesting for us to engage in, to engage in this kind of psychological analysis. And a portrait is, it is a psychological analysis. It's not just about making a record of the person's face. It's a real portrait is an exploration into the psychology of the person and their emotional experiences and things that are maybe unsaid, but stories we could infer about their life based on how they carry their face and the emotions that are there, the emotions that are on the surface, and then the emotions that are maybe hiding behind the surface. So it makes it a fascinating portrait with John, you know, because we see this very kind of tough exterior, but he'd be the first to say that, you know, he's a very gentle, kind spirit. So you can see I'm working my way slowly, very slowly. And I'm really striving to get an accurate state of each shape as I go along here. I do want to say that the difference between the camera screen, when I look at my drawing on camera, versus the actual drawing as it usually appears, it's very intense on the screen, and the lines look very black on the screen. But in real life, when I look at these lines, they look like a lighter black, so a darker gray. In other words, I'm not pressing that hard. Here's an important moment. Let's see if we can commit to where this is, the bottom of this bag of the eye, because that's where we turn up, and this will be the lowest part of the eye. And let's check it in terms of its angle and its line up with the other side. You know, for one thing is what angle, what axis is there. So we want to get a straight edge and check that. You know, I'll just grab the closest straight edge available to me. So I have this angle. So it's not straight across, but it's that. And then I want to check, is that true? I hold it over to my screen, I hold my arm straight, and I see if that is the same angle, the same tilt. I see if I'm close or if I'm off. Now the other thing we could check is, let's check a horizontal measurement from here, going straight across. According to my drawing, it should be cutting through pretty close to the bottom of this eye. But let's see what it does on the screen. I hold up the measurement, and I see that it should be lower. It shouldn't be, it shouldn't be coming there. It should be really close to the bottom of this bag of the eye. So what does that mean? That could mean a couple possibilities. It could mean that this is too high and needs to come down. It could mean that this is too low and needs to go up. It could be a third possibility that a compromise needs to happen. It could be that this comes down a teeny bit and that goes up a teeny bit. And that's usually, I find that's usually the scenario, the most likely and the most efficient correction to make is kind of a compromise. One thing I noticed is that if I use this line to feel out where that is, that tells me that I could afford to drop this a little bit. So like coming down to there, because that seems very short. Meanwhile, this side could be brought up possibly. I'm not going to move that one too much yet until I know more about this information. Okay, so let me take a break real quick here. I'm not going to stop the video. I just need to grab my sanding block. I'm going to grab the sanding block. And I'm going to sharpen my vine charcoal. So sharpening the vine charcoal frequently. You can see how it's not quite as perfectly sharp as it was. So I use the sanding block, and I sand by laying the whole vine charcoal flat on the sanding block. So now we're back to a nice sharp point. So as we get into tightening up on the eyes, we need to be super careful, because the eyes are simply very easily very easy to make errors there, and they're very small compared to the whole face. So if they're out of position ever so slightly, we really sense that, and it's really clear and awkward in the drawing, and we always end up having to correct the eyes, I find. Usually for me, in any drawing or painting I do, I always have to take at least one eye and kind of move it, not just in one direction, like just move it straight up or straight in. It's usually two directions I have to move it. I usually have to move it like both up slightly and out slightly. So knowing that, I go into the eye with a lot of caution in the hopes that one day I won't have to make those kind of corrections anymore. So I keep it light, and I approach it with a great deal of skepticism that I've got it in the right place. I tell myself, probably have it a little bit wrong. There's this crease out here on the outside of the eye. I like that as kind of a assisting hand, another shape to test out the position. And start to try out the shape here of this upper eyelid. Okay, let's find that iris in there. It's hiding in there. It's dark. It's very dark in there. Sharpening. So we see the iris is there. We see the terminal curve of the eyeball here, and a little feature in the eye called the semilunar fold. And the shape of the inner canthus here, this dark inner corner of the eye where the caruncula gland is, the little pink gland, lives in there. And let's look at the shape of the opening of his eye. The whole eye is in shadow shape, we realize. The whole opening of the eye. The only place in this portrait that we're going to see light on the open eye will be a little piece of the sclera over here on this eye. There's a little tiny triangle of white. So it's the sclera of the eye with actual light on it. But this eye, the opening of it is completely in shadow. But even so, it's helpful to try to take the information that you can see of his iris and see if you can place it in there and use the negative shapes around it. This piece of sclera over here and the sclera on this side. See if you can use those to help get the iris in the right place, and making sure that all of those are correct. Well, that helps you also ensure that the whole shape of the eye is also correct. So there's going to be an iris about here. So lightly toning that in with some vine charcoal. It's kind of a placeholder. Now there's the very delicate form of his lower eyelid. We won't make that a line. We'll just try to use suggestions of lines and tones to describe the plane of that. And I should probably stop working on this eye for the moment and go over to the other eye and cross-relate them together so that we can check how they agree or don't agree. So to move to this side, let's first look at our larger shapes. So let's come back to this terminator of the cast shadow of the nose on this side and how it works its way across the cheek and outside of the nasolabial furrow on this side. So the nasolabial furrow is hiding inside this shadow mass here. So we have to look at this larger shadow shape as kind of a picture. See if we can use pareidolia to assist us in getting the character of this shape right. If we can look at a creature or an animal or personality to the shape, we can get a much more accurate grip on the shape. So, take the first thing that occurs to you. If you see a picture of an animal there in that shadow shape, use it. Use the personality of it. And see if the personality of your depiction of it matches the one you see in our references, in our photos and videos of John. I'll tell you what I'm seeing here. Maybe take a moment to see if to find your own picture first. And I'm seeing kind of a strange, funny woodpecker, where this is the beak of the woodpecker. And this would be the head and the kind of the plumage coming off the back of the woodpecker's head. And then there's some craziness going on in the woodpecker's body down here. So it's probably more useful for capturing this area of the woodpecker. Now we could turn this around. We could turn the shape around and look at something else. We can make multiple pictures out of one piece of pareidolia. So what if I turn this around and make this the front of the creature? Like this is kind of the nose of a kind of a cartoon Tyrannosaurus Rex dinosaur. Like this is his nose and this is his funny little under jaw right here. And then he has his arms reaching out. These are the arms reaching out towards where the iris is. And the key is, to compare the personalities, because I can see that I have that character here, and I can also see the one in the photograph of John. But the question is, are they the same one? Are they the same individual? Do they have the same name and the same voice? So we're fighting for that kind of accuracy and specificity in the shape. We're trying to get those characters, whether it's the woodpecker I named or the funny Tyrannosaurus Rex here. We're getting them to be exactly the same character and personality. At least that's what we're striving for. So we were able to find, by using the head of the dinosaur and the beak of the woodpecker, we're able to find a pretty good grip on where the other eye is over here. But I still treat it with an ounce of skepticism. I know from experience that I may have put it in the wrong place. So I'm waiting to commit 100% to it. This will be our iris here, I think. It's good to take some horizontal measurements. Maybe pick a point of this and shoot it across to see, does it line up the way it should? Let me pick something. I'll pick this point here. That's the point where this comes down and then it cuts over. So it's this little point on the upper eyelid, really described by this light shape on the upper eyelid. And I'm picking that simply because it is something that comes to a nice definitive point. So it's easier for me to measure with. So at that point, we can go across and find out if we're in good relationships here. So I'm going to shoot across with this. I'm going to hold it up to the photograph. And what I see is that it should come right off of this point. So the inner canthus on this side has a little point to it. And I'm gonna check that to see if I'm okay. So according to this, I could be a little lower with that upper eyelid. So, but then I noticed that the shape of the light on my upper eyelid here can drop down a little bit, and I was kind of missing a little piece of it there, and so feeling like things are working out pretty well, pretty close there. Yeah. But while you're making this pass over the drawing, where we're ostensibly tightening things up and getting closer to a commitment to a position for all the different items, just keep in your mind that you still may have to move them. You still may have to make corrections. And so if you know that, going forward into the drawing, it prevents you from doing anything so brazen that it creates a permanent mark on the drawing. We want to be able to keep things open so that we can make corrections and revisions in the drawing without having to really make a severe correction that would be damaging to the paper and would really show permanently as a place where we made a correction. Now I like what I see happening here on his face. The creases in the forehead create shapes and designs, and they create distances and spaces for me to try to read the shapes. So I find it helpful to use and look at this shape created here, this shape of light, from this crease to that crease. And then look at the pictures and shapes and tones in the forehead here. And John has this particular crease right here that traps in this whole little microcosm. And it's funny, as soon as I do that, I see a fish's head here. You know, the upper jaw of the fish, the lower jaw of the fish, the open mouth of the fish. I guess this is like a gill on the fish. So it looks like a fish jumping with its mouth open, like a salmon or a steelhead or something like that, a trout. And then I can look over at John and see, is there also a fish in the patterns there? And I usually find a fish, but it's usually a different kind of character than the one in my drawing. So I set about making edits to mine to match the character. So that's pareidolia helping us there. And here, this little, we can do pareidolia with tiny things too, like this little tone in his forehead looks like a little bird tail. It's just a tiny little moment of pareidolia. So pareidolia can be big or really big, or it can just be a tiny little thing. You can use it at every scale to improve the accuracy of your shapes. Okay, so I think this gives you the gist of what I'd like you to do as you pass over the drawing in this stage. The basic keys are keep the vine charcoal super sharp, go slow, and tighten up your shapes with extreme accuracy as much as you can. And that's going to be this stage. It's the stage before we jump to reiterating the line drawing with charcoal pencil. That'll be another level of tightness and commitment to the drawing. And then after that, we'll think about how we start to apply tones. Okay, so join me in the next video when you're ready for that. Thanks very much.